Okay, today I'm going to actually do a video blog post. I'm going to answer a question from Laura. I am actively trying to create some passive income streams right now as the reality of private high school tuition looms. I like your post about e-publishing, but I'm wondering if it's really worth the effort. Without quoting numbers, do you really pull in enough money this way to offset the amount of work you put into these projects? I ask because I'm considering it, but I also need to use my time effectively, as does everyone. So basically, it's a time versus money issue, right? So that's what I'm going to attempt to answer in this blog post. I'm not an expert on ebooks, but I do play an expert here on my blog. I have had a little bit of experience doing them. You can look off to the side on my blog somewhere, and I've got 3 ebooks up right now on Barnes & Noble and Amazon, and an app on iTunes. And basically I can just give you what I've learned. Creating ebooks is virtually free, right? So we're talking about a time investment. So how much is your time worth? And that's really the question that you have to ask yourself, is if you know, how much do you need to make in a week in order to pay your bills? Some people don't need to make money. Some people might want to do ebooks just for the fun of it, and if they make a little money, then that's great. You know, that's gravy on top. Other people, I think, like Laura and like myself, and many of you probably want your ebooks to actually earn money to offset the time that you're spending on them. So I'm going to attempt to give you as much information as I can so you can make the best decision on whether it's something that you want to delve into. So most illustrators need to, I would assume, need to make about $500 to $1,000 a week to be able to pay their bills. Some people need more than $1,000 a week. Okay. But let's just do some figures really quick here. Normally on a picture book that I do with a publisher, I'm spending 2 to 3 months on that book. So for those 2 to 3 months, I'm getting anywhere from $8,000 to $12,000 in advance against royalties on those contracts. So I'm getting enough money to pay my bills, to pay for that time. But I don't think I can afford to spend that kind of time on an ebook, because if the ebook doesn't earn anything, I'm out 2 to 3 months worth of work, and I couldn't afford to do that. I've got 3 kids, I've got a wife, and so I've got to earn money. So what I've decided to do is, on any one ebook, I can only spend 2 weeks. So I've given myself 2 weeks of time, and that's a rough estimate, and that's not 2 weeks where I stop everything and I just work for 2 weeks, but it is time where I find time here and there and between class, and late at night and while we're watching TV or while we're at the doctor's office or whatever, and I'll start to work on a book. And I'm basically working where I'm sketching that book out in 2 or 3 days, after I have the idea, and then I'm taking maybe 5 or 6 days to paint that book in Photoshop. And they're very simple. If you've looked at my ebooks, they're extremely simple. So I choose a project where I think I can knock it out in 2 weeks and keep the quality high. So here are some things to consider. The competition. So I'm noticing that every week or two there's an amazingly new amount of ebooks on the Barnes & Noble website and on Amazon, of course, and iTunes. But that's been happening for a long time, so I wouldn't get too concerned with that. But I do feel like right now is an amazing time in history where we haven't seen a transformation like this. I haven't seen one in my lifetime where we're actually switching mediums right now. And so I do believe that the early bird gets the worm, and it's about positioning. So if you can get a book out there or books out there quicker, this year versus next year versus 2 or 3 years, you're probably going to do better than the guy that gets it out, a year or 2 from now. Okay, you may do a book. It may not be doing that well commercially, but it may give you the exposure that you need to where a publisher or an editor might see it, and they might want to pick it up and publish it. Now that's a long shot, but that is a distinct possibility, and it does happen. So that might be a case for where you want to work longer on your book, and maybe you're saying, I don't need the money generated from sales. What I'm really looking for is a publisher. And so rather than wait, because I'm sending it out to publishers, or I have sent it out and I haven't found the right home, maybe I'll publish it in an ebook form, and then it might find another life that way. Another thing you want to look at is focusing your book in a niche market. Rather than compete with all the books that are out there, on the different websites that are selling them, you may say, I only want to compete with books, that are, raccoon books or something, or maybe only want to do, books for, kids that are getting bullied or something, and you only compete with that little niche market. So people really aren't finding you doing a general search for books, or when they log and see the splash page on those sites, but they are finding you when they type in bullies, or they are finding you when they type in raccoons or something like that. And also labeling your book or titling your book accordingly. You're much better off titling your book Monkey and Croc rather than Harold and Clyde, because people aren't going to search for Harold and Clyde, but they will search for monkey. They might search for croc or crocodile. Marketing. If you have a big Facebook account, if you have a blog, if you have a big email list, those are people who actually have a market that they can already start to use to generate sales. Now, one of the interesting things is that your book will do better the more sales it gets, because it moves up in the search list, and there are general searches. If you spend any time on these retail book sites like Barnes and Noble, like Amazon, when you jump on those things, they have general searches like children's books age 3 to 5, or children's books age 6 to 8, and you click on that, and they have a list of books, and it's a popularity contest. So the more sales that you can generate, the higher you come up in those searches, and the more sales you get without having to do any marketing. So, for instance, when I first started, Monkey and Croc was at the back of the pack. It was sales ranked 13,000, and it actually at one point early on, back in December, moved up to 660, which is pretty good. And it was the #1 book under the category Monkey. Now it's slipped a little bit, and it's actually come back up now, and it's doing quite well right now. So you definitely want to use social networking. If you don't have a Facebook account, if you don't have a blog, if you don't have an audience, you're going to have a harder time. You might do an ebook, you might put it on the site, but nobody's going to find it. So you have to generate some sales. And I think right now on Barnes and Noble, you probably, if you got about 50 to 100 sales that you could generate on your own, your book would be in a place, at least right now, and this is March or April 2011, your book would definitely be in a place where people could find it just on doing some general searches, some of the general tabs that they have on the side, and it would come up. And that's been my experience. If you get about 50 sales, all of a sudden you've moved up. Now, those 50 sales have to happen within like a month's time. The first month that you put it on there, if that happens over a year, it's not going to have as much effect. But you also want to get people to like your book on Facebook. Barnes and Noble respects that, and they move you up in the search rank based on just people liking your book on Facebook, not necessarily buying it. So that's one of the things that I found on their search algorithm. While we're at it, let's talk about multiple retailers. So we've got Apple, so iTunes, iBooks, Amazon, and then they're saying that Google Books are probably going to be the third, and Barnes & Noble is going to probably be the fourth. Barnes & Noble right now has probably about a 15 to 20% market share on ebooks, so a pretty good chunk, but definitely not the biggest player. But right now, I really like Barnes & Noble and their model. It's free to publish on there, and they're very easy to work with. The different models are, Amazon pretty much has the same business model as Barnes & Noble. They let you upload your book for free. You put your book on the site, and you can start selling right away. The problem with Amazon is they don't have a color Kindle right now. Now there's rumor that they're going to be releasing one pretty soon. Kindle uses that e-ink, and they actually have the technology is there right now. Has been released for color e-ink. So there's a lot of speculation and a lot of sort of rumor that Amazon will probably be releasing a color Kindle as early as this summer. One of the problems with Amazon right now is that you can't do a search for just ebooks for children. So if you upload an ebook to Amazon, your book in a category, let's say you did a frog book, like I've got a frog book on my site. My frog book is competing with all the printed books, and there's no way to search just the ebooks. Now on Barnes & Noble, you can just search ebooks. So there's a lot less books to look through, and so you get a lot more sales. And so on Amazon, I haven't done really well right now because no one can find my book. But what I'm hoping for, and what a lot of people are hoping for, is that when and if they, or if and when they release that color Kindle, they'll also release a search feature on their sites where you can say, I just want to look at color books for this color Kindle. And if they do, then that should make sales go much higher for people like me, people like you who are doing children's books, children's ebooks. Okay, iTunes, whole nother thing there. You know, with Barnes & Noble and Amazon and Google, you upload a book and you're at the back of the line, and you have to work your way up by getting those sales and getting Facebook likes and stuff and getting people to buy it, and you move up into the search towards the front. On iTunes, it's a complete different thing. When you make an app for iTunes, it's like they kick you out on stage. So you're at the front of the pack, and you get on, you know, for maybe 2 or 3 days, sometimes a week. You're on a page right on the front of their site that says, you know, new apps, and check these out. And so people get a chance, you know, all over the world to see what you created, and then they take you down off of there. And then it's basically because their search features are so non-existent in some ways. The only real way you're going to get sales on iTunes after those few weeks is if somebody really likes your app, or if a lot of people really like your app, your book, and they start telling other people about it and sharing it with other people, saying, oh, you got to see what I got on my phone or on my iPad. And then other people will buy it, and then it's kind of word of mouth, and it kind of goes viral. If it doesn't do that, you know, there's tons of apps on iTunes that nobody knows about because they've had their little day in the sunshine, and they weren't that great, or they weren't that special, or whatever, and then they just kind of die. So, you know, Apple and iTunes, if you can make it there, you've got it made, because there's not a lot of middle ground. You either do really well or you don't. Okay, let's talk audience real quick. You know, one of the problems for children's book illustrators is that our audience are children, and they can't buy the books that we make. And so that's a real problem for us. So we have to try to appeal to parents. So we have to make a book that we think a kid will like, but we have to make the parent like it so they'll buy it for their kid, right? It's kind of weird. And I think that if you're a novelist, you have an advantage, because on your website, on your, you know, all the people that have liked you on Facebook like you because they like what you write. And they can't wait for you to release the next thing so they can buy it. So I think it's much easier for a novelist to publish and be successful with ebooks than it is for children's book authors and illustrators. And I just put that out there because I think the more you can get your brain around, you know, what's actually happening and how you're trying to market, you know, you might come up with innovative things that, you know, people haven't even thought of. Some people have asked about celebrity. You know, if you're more of a celebrity, can you sell more books than if you're a non-celebrity? And I think that's absolutely the case. And some people have asked me, well, Will, you know, you've been an illustrator for a long time, so it's going to be easier for you. I don't think that I'm getting a lot of sales. I don't think most of my sales are coming from people who know me. In fact, I think probably 90% are coming from people who are just finding my book and saying, oh, that looks cute, I'll buy it. You know, and that's really what I'm doing right now. I am not a celebrity illustrator by any stretch of the imagination. In my opinion, in children's illustrators, there are those who are household names, and then there's everybody else. And I think that there are a few people up on top that, you know, people might recognize their name. Mo Willems comes to mind, you know, Chris Van Allsburg, those types, Tony DiDolizzi. You know, and there's a lot of those guys, but then there's everybody else, and I definitely fall into the everybody else category. So I don't think that I'm getting sales or doing well because of any kind of celebrity status. Price. One of the distinct advantages that we, and I say we, the self-publisher, the person who's making their own ebooks, has over a traditional publisher is that traditional publishers have a warehouse of printed books, and they're taking those books and they're converting them to ebooks, and then they're putting them on these websites. Okay. Now, one of the problems that they have is that they've spent a lot of money printing the physical versions of the books. So they have a lot of money invested. They want to sell those books, and they don't want to undercut those books. So they're keeping their price high, and in many ways, I think higher than most people are willing to pay, at least right now. But I think prices are going to basically be coming down. I think what we have is an advantage where we can set our price anywhere, because especially if you're making a book, especially for an ebook, again, you have your time invested, but you don't have money invested. So you don't have to recoup a bunch of money that you feel like you're out if you don't get. So right now, it looks like most people who are self-publishing are pricing their books underneath where the big publishers are, and we're able to move up in the search rank because people are going, well, I could buy this book for $6.99 or $12.99, and I can buy this book for $2.99 or $1.99 or 99 cents. And so what we're seeing is a lot of people who are self-publishing who are moving way up in the search ranks above, some of the establishments out there, like the Olivia books and the Curious Georges of the world, and all those books that we've grown up with, P.D. Eastman, Are You My Mother, stuff like that. That's right up at the top. But then right next to it, you'll see self-published books that are competing, and they're competing on price. Demand on ebooks is something that everyone needs to consider, because when we're talking about, is it worth it or not? Is it worth it to do it? One thing that's important to know is the projections are, and you can look at a lot of articles on Google right now that talk about projections for 2013-14, where ebook purchases are going to quadruple. So as people are shifting, from traditional books to ebooks, now not everybody will. The traditional books aren't dead. We're not saying that. But as they gain in popularity, so will the demand, because there's just going to be that many more people with those devices out there looking for content. And if you have content out there, there's a good chance they'll find your content and buy it. So, are they worth it? I'll give you some figures on my books. So Monkey and Croc is actually close to paying me back for the time that I had invested. In fact, in a month or two, based on how sales have been, I will have totally recouped the time that I spent on Monkey and Croc. And from now on, no matter how it does, any money that it generates will be pure profit, will be extra, more than I needed. Keep in mind that ebooks can stay in print forever. Physical books have a shelf life. They go out of print. But ebooks stay in print forever. I think the question you have to ask yourself is, can you afford to be paid over time? Okay? Because that's what's going to happen. You're not going to get a paycheck for the 2 weeks, the 4 weeks, the 2 months, however long you decide to spend on your ebook. But you will get paid over time if you do the little bit of marketing that we talked about before, and generating some sales on your own to get it to come up in search rank so that other people can find your book. So here's one way to look at it. How many of you out there have $100,000 just sitting around in cash? Well, if you did, and you put $100,000 in a savings account, which would be stupid, but if you did, right now it's getting about 1%. Okay? Now 1%, if you do all the math, ends up being about $3 a day. Okay? So every day you get $3. So you wake up tomorrow, you have another $3. The day after that, another $3. For a whole year, you're getting $3 a day. Okay? About $1,000 in a year. Right now, the newer ebooks that I put on, just Barnes & Noble, are doing better than that. Okay? Without getting, I don't want to put real strong, definite figures out there, because it fluctuates and it changes. But since I've started, they've always been doing better than $3, and some have been doing a lot better than that. Okay? So I've been able to count on more than $3 a day on each book. If you were getting $3 a day, that's roughly $100 a month, right? That's $1,200 in a year. And if your book sells about the same, about that rate for 5 years, that's $6,000. Imagine if you had 10 books or 50 books out there, right? So that's another thing. That's only on Barnes & Noble. I'm still hoping that Amazon will start producing. I've got I've got my brother-in-law who's helping me convert books to iTunes for the iBooks, and also Google. We're starting to put our books on Google, so we don't even have any kind of track record there at all. And you never know if you do a book that will really hit. Now, my books right now are still climbing. They're going up like this on Barnes & Noble. I don't know how they're going to do on other sites. They may do worse. They may do the same. They may do better. But right now, these are the figures that I have. So I want to ask you this. One last question to think about is, how many CDs do you buy when you listen to music? Or are you buying music on iTunes for 99 cents or some other site like Yahoo Music or something like that? How many videos are you renting at Blockbuster? Or are you streaming them? Are you starting to stream them now? Those industries went through major changes, are continuing to go through major changes. And what makes us think we're going to be any different? I've heard a lot of people that have a lot of negative things to say about ebooks. But think of the musicians that had negative things to say about iTunes, and think about Hollywood complaining about things going down to streaming. You can't stop technology; it's here to stay. And with prices, on music going from where you had to buy a CD for $12.99 to $1 a song, you think it's ever going to go back? I mean, people are used to paying 99 cents for a song. That's what they want. That's what they're doing. And they're not going to stand for anything less. And the same thing goes for movies. Redbox, 99 cents. Think about this. A whole motion picture can entertain you for 2 hours for 99 cents. So what do you think is going to happen to books? That's just a question I'm going to throw out there. Next week, I'm going to answer a question by Nicole Caulfield. Again, I'm not an expert on ebooks. I'm just giving what I've experienced. But she asks basically a question on how to convert your ebook and how to make an ebook and what different formats and stuff like that. So I'm going to give out information about those next week. So check back next week. And it's been fun. I love sharing information. I think that we can benefit from each other by the free, by giving information out for free. I've been amazed at how much stuff I could find just from doing Google searches, and I think in the end, it makes the illustration community so much more of a friendly, happy place when we can share information with each other. And so I'm just glad to do it. Thanks for watching.